Hello everyone. Today we will discuss about the history chapter 3, life in the rural areas. The life in the Indian villages both in the pre-colonial time and the post-colonial time. Now, the rural life in pre-colonial India, that is, before the British came to India and after the British. Before the British came to India, Indian villages were self-sufficient units. Whatever they needed, they get from the villages themselves. The farmers were the owners of the land they cultivated, and the land revenue was directly paid to the king, not in cash but in kind. That is, they had to give a part of produce to the king as a land revenue. If the crops failed due to natural calamity or the failure of monsoon, the king would be kind enough to reduce the land revenue or cancel it altogether. Now, the rural life in the colonial era. After the Britishers came to India, things started to changes in the Indian villages. The land revenue was fixed and have to pay in cash. It began to be collected by the agents of the company, that is, the company officials itself, and no exemptions were allowed in any circumstances, even if the crops failed. We must remember here, Britishers came to India as a trader and their ultimate aim was maximum profit. That was the objective of East India Company. In order to earn money, they needed to collect as much as revenue as possible. Now, why did they need money? They needed money to purchase goods in India and sell them in the European markets. They needed the money for efficiently run the administration of the country and to maintain large standing army to conquering territories in India as well as abroad. Hence, it is evident that they had continuous war in India as well as in abroad. As I said, the main source of income was revenue, and it would be land revenue. Hence, it was essential the British official collected land revenue in time, and a stable, timely revenue collection was required. In order to earn stable and timely land revenue, Warren Hastings came up with a policy. Warren Hastings gave a right to collect the revenue to those people who claimed to offer to collect the revenues, that is, the right to collect the revenue to the highest bidder. Now, most often, the amount offered by the particular person was more than what the land can produce. Hence, could not get the full amount, and since the amount varied from the one year to another, the company's income was also not stable. For stable source of income, the British came up with the three land revenue policies after Warren Hastings: permanent settlement, Mehalwari and Ryotwari system. Permanent settlement system was devised by Lord Cornwallis in 1793. According to this settlement, local jamindars were given the ownership rights and right to collect the revenue. They would collect the revenue that is fixed amount that is stipulated by the Britishers at the particular time of the year, and they would given to the British. They could also collect more than the fixed amount that could be the surplus and could keep the amount themselves. The land revenue that was fixed and could not revised later. If the jamindars unable to pay the revenue at the particular date, the jamindari right would be taken away and given it to another jamindar. Now, impact of permanent settlement on the company. The permanent settlement proved to be advantageous to the East India Company. It guarantees the company a fixed and regular income because the revenue was fixed and no scope of revision, and it also created a new class called Jamindars who were loyal to the Britishers. Now, what was the impact of permanent settlement on the peasants? However, it has certain negative impacts because the land revenue which was fixed was very high and the peasants were unable to pay on time to the jamindars, and sometimes they were evicted out from their land, and sometimes they had to sell or mortgage their land to pay the revenue. The peasants had to go to moneylender to borrow money. Hence, peasants' indebtedness led to poverty, the landlords from their side not doing anything to improve the productivity, not doing any irrigation facilities also. That is why agriculture get declined. Mahalwari system was introduced in the parts of Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh and Punjab. In this system, land was commonly owned by a group of villages called Mahal. The headman of that Mahal was responsible for the payment of the revenue to the company. Also, the revenue demand was not fixed permanently. It could be revised periodically. Here lies the difference between Mahalwari system and the permanent settlement. Now, the Ryotwari system. This system was formulated by Thomas Munro. It was introduced in the part of Madras and Bombay presidencies. In this system, the settlement was made directly between the company and the ryot or peasants. The farmers were recognized as the owner of the land as long as he paid the land revenue. Also, the revenue was fixed according to the fertility of the soil. These land revenue settlements formulated by the company impoverished the peasants. Land now became sellable commodity which could be bought, sold or mortgaged. This had deep impact on rural life and economy. Most peasants had small incomes. Moreover, high revenue demands, failure of crops, and costly social rituals and ceremonies forced the peasants to go to unscrupulous money lenders. Land was sacred for them, so instead of selling, they would mortgage there to the money lenders. The money lenders charge a high rate of interest which the peasants were unable to repay, and hence the land was taken away by the money lenders. The landless peasants found it difficult to support their families. The new class of jamindars did not pay any heed to the woes of the peasants. They did nothing to improve agriculture or increase the productivity of the lands. Most of them were absentee landlords. Failure of rain brought about starvation in the form of famines. Hence, British land policy brought impoverishment of the peasants. In the 19th century, the British encouraged the Indians to cultivate cash crops. These included indigo, jute, oilseeds, sugarcane, tea, coffee, and cotton. These were needed as raw materials for the British manufacturing industries. The company officials forced the Indians to sow only cash crops. As a result, production of food crops declined, resulting in shortage of food. The cultivation of one of these cash crops would lead a rebellion in Bengal in 1859-60. A blue colored dye is extracted from the indigo plant, and this dye is used to dye clothes. This dye was in great demand for the textile industries in Great Britain during the Industrial Revolution. Now, how did the Britain procure indigo? Britain climate was not suitable for the cultivation of indigo. Hence, it imported indigo from West Indies and from North America. However, the collapse of the indigo plantations in these regions in the late 18th century forced Britain to turn to other countries for supplies. Hence, the East India Company turned towards India. Now, what were the causes leading to the Indigo Rebellion? India have been growing indigo since the medieval period, but utilized some proportion of the land. The British planters, however, forced the Indian cultivators to grow only indigo. The planters signed contracts with the Indian cultivators that they later would sow only indigo in return for a price. Gradually, however, with time, the price paid to the cultivators decreased. The planters also resorted to cruel methods to force the cultivators. About these atrocities have been mentioned in Deen Bandhu Mitra's play Neel Darpan. Even if the cultivator wanted to grow other crops, he could not do so, and The cultivation of indigo destroyed the fertility of the soil, and these were the reasons of indigo rebellion of Bengal. In the year 1959-60, Indigo Rebellion was a powerful peasants' protest. It was a program of non-cooperation with the British planters. As a strategy, thousands of peasants refused to grow indigo on their lands. The cultivators attacked the indigo factories. Sometimes the gomasthas or agents of the planters were beaten up. The peasants also boycotted servants working in European plantations. In some places, the local jamindars also helped the Indian peasants. After the Indigo Rebellion, the Britishers forced to bring about certain changes in the indigo plantation. The Indigo Commission was set up for the entire process. Its task would be to look into the process of indigo production in India and suggest further modification. In fact, Bengal stopped being the center of indigo cultivation and planters shifted their base to Champaran in Bihar. And later, as we move on with our syllabus, we would see how Mahatma Gandhi came to rescue for the indigo planters of Champaran in Bihar. With this, we come to the end of the chapter. Thank you.